Before the big iron gates slammed behind me as I entered the Hanoi prison, I found it hard to think of freedom as something other than an abstraction that's used in songs, Supreme Court debates, and political speeches. In this respect, I was like many Americans today who take freedom for granted. By the time I was released to come home nearly 8 years later, freedom had long since ceased to be an abstraction to me. To those of us who have served time in communist jails, freedom has a delicious, tangible meaning. It has become something we can figuratively reach out and touch. Such feelings are likely understandable in men who have spent years shackled and manacled in prison. But my love of freedom is not just a reaction to cruelty. My appreciation of its preciousness stems from a first-hand understanding of its rarity. The void of freedom in many other parts of the world, and particularly the passivity with which this lack is accepted, is staggering to a man who is born and raised free. In my Hanoi cell, I found myself daily picking up shocking signals in that milieu of deadened sensitivities, like these. The routine feedlot attitude of the simple peasant guards who delivered daily food rations down the line to cooped-up humans, fowl, and livestock with expressionless unconcern for the continual darkness, suffocating closeness, and isolation in which the chickens, pigs, and men were confined. The continuous barking of loudspeakers on the street telling the people of Hanoi what to think. The pathetic ignorance behind the outburst of a prominent political cadre who shouted to me in a moment of exasperation, "We may not have freedom, but after 400 years we have order, and we will settle for that." These and countless other impressions drive home to me the fact that human freedom is not the way of the world. To be free to come and go, to choose your life's work, to go for the big bucks or selfless service, or to hit the road as a drifter. These are not open choices to most of the 4.5 billion souls on this planet. Human freedom as we Americans know it is available only to a steadily shrinking minority of people. You don't know what freedom is until, for a starter, you live for several years in a box cell 10 feet long and 4 feet wide. I was crouched in the corner of that cell when my guards caught me writing a note to one of my fellow POWs. They were very mad about that note, so they took me from that box cell to an even smaller, low-ceiling outbuilding, a place we called Calcutta, and laid me on the floor in squeeze irons. Fetters and jail take away your external freedom. You can't get up and go. But what about the freedom of your will and spirit? Our captors wanted to get at that more than anything. Not by brainwashing. I don't believe there is any such thing. It's a journalist's word. The real answer is simpler. It's pain. They tied your arms behind your back with ropes, cutting off circulation, and then violently and methodically tightening those ropes further, forcing your head down between your legs to produce claustrophobia. Death was not an option. There was only one way to stop it, and that was to say, "I submit." In his Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle points out the difference between acts done voluntarily and those under compulsion. But he adds that a measure of free choice may remain even in the severest extortion situations. We had many ways of clinging to that tiny residue of freedom in Hanoi. One way was the tap code. Although we were in solitary confinement, we could surreptitiously communicate with another, set up a chain of command, encourage the doubtful, console the depressed, comfort the hurt. We figured out ways to prevent our captors from manipulating us into taking photo and television propaganda for them. One way was to assume a character like an actor, a personality of unpredictability. Our captors did not hold with our unpredictability. When they put an American pilot before the cameras, they wanted to be sure of his total submission. For that, they had to be sure that his behavior was predictable. To sabotage that, when put under stress, you could stage random scenes of emotional instability. You could throw chairs around. You had to be a good actor. If they thought you had not lost control of yourself but were putting them on, within minutes you could be back in the ropes sobbing like a baby. When you pulled off the act unconvincingly, they didn't like it. For then you were not useful as propaganda. They'd say, "This guy is not what we want to take downtown." People have said to me, "I couldn't take a prison experience like you guys. You all must have had a tremendously high threshold of pain." But it was not a question of a high or low threshold of pain. It was a question of endurance. It didn't matter so much if you submitted under pain one day, so long as you made them start all over again the next day. They didn't like to do that. So the thing was to cling to that tiny vestige of freedom that was in your power to hold. That word freedom is crucial. Freedom does not exist because our Constitution says it should. Over the course of our country's history, people have constantly labored to keep freedom and have paid dearly for it. Our Declaration of Independence of 204 years ago this week remains one of the most stirring documents in history, signaling a commitment to bear the responsibilities of protecting a way of life. After our bitter struggle for independence, brave and earnest men stepped forward to write our Constitution and formally frame the reasons for which we had fought that unpopular war against the British. No one had to remind our founding fathers of the cost. 56 of them knowingly laid their lives, liberty, and honor on the line when they signed that Declaration of Independence. And they paid their dues. In the ensuing war, 9 were killed in action. 5 died as prisoners of war. 12 had their homes burned. Several lost sons. One man's wife died in prison. And 17, including Thomas Jefferson, went broke. The legacy of these men was summed up very simply by Tom Paine. Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigue of supporting it. This nation has come a long way since the drafting of the Constitution, and the milestones are littered with human sacrifice. We've fought wars around the globe in freedom's name and have paid a terrible price for our most fundamental national belief. Today, there are men and women who may lay down their lives for this country and the freedom for which it stands. We all bear the painful cost of freedom. As we formally celebrate the commitment to break from England and protect our natural rights, let's hug to our breast our freedom, our most precious national treasure, knowing that it, like a child, is imperfect and demanding, but undeniably good. Let's keep our centuries-old habit of protecting that child of America, that freedom. She's getting more rare and precious every day.